we thought we were 10 minutes each.
That's okay.
It is on the agenda for today. Well, look, I mean, well perhaps I'll allow. Can I just allow another 5 minutes?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Do you want the 5 minutes for questions or for me to...
No, I think questions. And
okay,
if there's
questions
any,
would be far better.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and so ref first
points.
and then...
Point 10, you say the lease was taken over from 2005 to 2008 by a council company?
Yes.
So were they
Meta.
did they then operate in breach of the resource consent?
Yes. And it's also in there the fact that when the council actually paid Awaka Holdings a substantial amount of money, it was also to take over the liability of the non-compliant consents.
Okay, scary. I also have something here in the report which says, this is in our report, at one of these meetings, the Regulation and Democracy Services General Manager publicly apologised for Council's historic lack of compliance and monitoring relating to the site and provided an undertaking for better monitoring processes going forward. So, do you remember that?
Yes, I was at that meeting.
Okay, fine. Now, the only other question I have is, this is item 4.3.5. The council had said that they would respond to the matter by 31st of August 2009, and you chose to pursue an enforcement order application through the Environment Court before they responded to you. Why was that?
The reason for that was that at that meeting, the council officers advised Awaka Holdings to seek variations to the existing consents. We perceived what they were doing was advising them to legalise an illegal activity. And we had no choice. We either had to go to the Environment Court and test the legitimacy of the existing consents, or perhaps have to fight variations to the consents.
Okay, that's fine. No more questions.
Phil Clearwater.
Thank you. You've said that you've had to, as a community, you've had to live with the environmental effects from this nearby pit. Can you just explain briefly what some of them are? I recall some of them being in the media, but can you just remind us?
This has been going on now since about 2003. All the community lives relatively close to the site. We're continually subjected to dust, noise, rodents, pollution, and more recently the huge MDF fire, which went for many, many months, and we were given assurances at that time that once the MDF fire was extinguished, it would be removed from the site. It was extinguished many, many months ago, and it's still on the site. And even that itself was the mitigating facts were meant to be, and it was either meant to be covered or watered down. Even that hasn't taken place.
I'm confused about the status of Meta. In your documentation, you say that it's a CCC company in partnership with Concut Limited, and in the attachment that you put as an exhibit note with the report of the meeting at the Sockburn Service Centre, it says that Peter summarised some of the issues raised at the last meeting, one of them being the status of Meta New Zealand Limited, and a comment made that the City Council had some responsibility if Meta went under. Peter confirmed that there is no connection between the Council and Meta, and the Council, we will not be picking up the pieces. There is no fallback on the Council. What's the difference there?
Well, I guess far cleverer people than me will be able to point that out, and that is the fact that at that stage that we perceived that Meta was in fact a council company. Now, I know through the logistics of bookwork you can make it look as though it isn't a council company, but basically it was the council that finished up stumping up with $1.56 million to in fact settle Meta's liability to the Awaka Road site. Now, it's a mystery to me how you can stump up with $1.56 million when you say it isn't your company.
Thank you. I mean, well, that obviously raises a few other questions. Yanni Johansson?
I think the point to make is that Meta went belly up and council had to bail it out. So So as part of the bailout, this was one of the conditions that we pay the money and this issue gets resolved. Obviously, it hasn't been resolved. I just wanted to ask on the current status of this location and whether there's anything that you think we should be doing as a council to deal with what's currently happening there.
Okay. The result of the Environment Court hearing, we put into place a lot of conditions which all parties have agreed to, including the Christchurch City Council. We have given all parties a period of time to implement that proposal. And it goes out to basically 2 years for the landscaping proposal, which will hopefully mitigate some of the things that we're talking about. Where if all this had been implemented in 2005, which is in the same 2005 consent, it would all be established now and we wouldn't be here today having this conversation.
If I just be clear, when do these conditions have to be met? What date? And is there anything like the burnt out stuff that's there now that we should be serving abatement notices on or taking action on to get clean?
We've been dealing with your and council enforcement staff over that issue, and I'm not quite sure what stage it's at this time.
Look, thank you both very much. That's very helpful, and I think you've raised a lot of questions, certainly in the minds of councillors, so thank you very much for your presentation. And on the same subject, could we invite Mike Mora?
Thank you, your Madam Mayor and councillors. I've been involved in this site for well over 20 years, and not one day in that 20-year period, not for one day, has it ever complied with the conditions of its resource consent or resource consents. And it's still absolutely outstanding on heaps of resource consent issues, so there's a lot of work to be done on that site. A report that I was reading last night said that that site could be overfilled from the original ground level, which Judge Jackson ordered in 2005, that it not be filled above the original ground level. It has been filled above the original ground level between 8 to 10 metres. There was a Becker report came out about 3 years ago, at the time when Meta were on site. That report stated that to take the level of that site down by 1 metre would cost $33 million. So I done some sums last night on that, and this is factual, that it would cost to get that site down to the compliance of the 1985 consent would cost between $264 and $330 million. Now, I know that people are sniggering and think that cannot be right. I'm telling you that that is right. And we've been trying to get this sorted out since the thing was at original ground level. This site is a bloody mess, and it's the biggest mess, I think, in this city. And the City Council, at the end of the day, are as responsible as the crooks that have been operating on that site. And
sorry, could I just interrupt for a moment?
Yes.
Just could I urge a little caution around language and
Thank you.
and assertions about individuals who are not here to defend themselves?
Thank you. I wish they were. But anyway, the result of the situation has been that the Residents Association, being an incorporated society, has been the only tool that the community board has and the wider community of Rickett and Wigram to actually fight this issue. And I was at the meeting at Sockburn Service Centre. I was at all of those meetings where promises were made, the balls were dropped. We've got a new enforcement team running this enforcement arm of the City Council, and we will get it sorted. It's never been sorted. It's never been sorted. And not only did the council bail out Meta to the tune of $18 million to bail Meta out, they also paid $1.56 million to Allen Edge to take responsibility for the areas of non-compliance on that site. So when we look at that and the $124,000 that the Residents Association have had to front up to enforce, to get this job done for the people of Christchurch, because the council has not been doing it, and all they're asking for is $50,000 to pay their legal bills, I would say that is the best bargain the city could ever look for. If they'd have won that case to the point of the law and not negotiated, forced negotiation by the second judge that was involved in the court case, Judge Borthwick got sick of being messed around by parties, not Awatea Residents Association, but other parties involved in this case. It went on for well over 2 years, and this case still hadn't been heard. That judge got tied up in another court case, so they brought in another judge to hear it. So after 2.5 years of messing about, that judge took 2.5 hours to hear the case. 2.5 hours. A new judge, 2.5 hours, makes a decision. That judge in his wisdom made the decision not to grant the Residents Association costs. But the previous judge had halfway through the case. Judge Borthwick had, because she could see that the Residents Association were doing a very, very good job. It wasn't really their issue, but somebody had to fight it. So it was the Residents Association that fought it. The judge realised that and allowed them $18,000 in costs at that point in time. So honestly, it's a mess. It's not the first time this mess has been to this Christchurch City Council. We've had heaps and heaps of meetings. We've met with the enforcement team. We've met with Peter Mitchell and crew. We've met with everybody. And has it got a current resource consent? No, it hasn't. All that MDF that was an issue with that particular last fire, mind you, there's been a series of spontaneous combusted fires on that site, and the stain stuff sitting there now, uncovered. It was supposed to be windrowed as well, so that the 12,000 cubic metres of combustible material would be windrowed, so if it was to spontaneously combust again, it would be only a strip of it. And then the fire service would be able to get in if they were allowed on site and actually put it out. That hasn't happened. It was supposed to be covered. That hasn't happened. Why is it that all of these things are still happening and nothing's getting done about it? There was a whole heap of MDF by the same operator at the Islington Freezing Works site. That spontaneously combusted too. That out. It's the same toxic material that's seeping into our aquifer system now, our unconfined aquifer system now as we speak at Owaka. Bring that from the Islington site to the Owaka site. What did they do? They started carting the burnt stuff from Islington and adding it to Owaka illegally. So thanks to some community detectives, including me, we discovered this, alerted our enforcement staff. They discovered that Mike and his crew are telling the truth, that this is happening. So then they go and issue an abatement notice to stop him from doing it. And has he taken that stuff away that he illegally put there? So what I'm saying is $50,000 to reimburse the Residents Association is just an absolute pittance compared to the size of this. The City Council 2009, they haven't even found it to pick it up yet, let alone picked it up and done something with it. They haven't even been able to find it. It's been running out of control for 4 years. We've had different changes in the leadership of the enforcement team of the council. It was supposed to be fixed that time with a new enforcement team system in place. Is the enforcement arm of the council working to the satisfaction that it should be? I would say, and looking at this issue alone, no, it's not. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to be going around snooping. These people up the back here wouldn't have to be going around snooping. We wouldn't have to be following their trucks down the road to see where they're taking this illegal material. We wouldn't have to be doing that because our staff would be doing it. I rest my case.
Are there any questions? Tim Scandrett.
Can I just be clear that the council management knowingly bought a site which they knew was operating outside resource consents or in breach of record?
No, it was a council, it was Meta.
Yeah.
Meta that was operating the site. They leased the site off a company that was directed by Alan Edge,
Yeah.
because it changed several times in that period. But Alan Edge was involved in that site all the way along through those changes. When Meta started going into difficulties, financial difficulties, the council bought Meta out, and then they transferred the operation from a Waka Holdings site to the Bromley treatment transfer station site, and that's where they're still operating from there now. But to keep the trucks on the road and to keep the rubbish from being picked up from the people's footpaths, the only way out at the time was for the council to give an $18 million injection into Meta to keep it running, so the trucks would still be out there collecting the rubbish and taking it away.
So I suppose the core of the question is, we've got a contaminated site. Who owns the liability?
The liability, I believe, is, well, you'd have to say the owner of the site owns the liability, because the liability that was left on that site by Meta was accepted by Mr. Edge when he took the cheque for $1.56 million from the ratepayers of Christchurch.
So we.
Thank you. That's the end of the time allotted for the presentation. Thank you very much.
I should have sped up a little bit to allow more time for questions.
That's all right. Thank you very much. And now we move on.
Thank you.
I'm just going to move that the supplementary reports that have been circulated to councillors be formally brought onto the agenda as reports. Is there any objection to that course of action? I'll just take the leave of the council to do that. There appears to be none. Thank you very much. And